Hey y'all, how's it going? Well, I think you're really going to enjoy this next project.
Pause here. Anytime I make a video, there are always bloopers. And usually I cut out the bloopers, but this first blooper where my head is actually cut off in the video, I could not redo because we had already kind of moved forward and I didn't even know my head was cut off until I got back inside and had done all the video. My husband was out there. Why in the world didn't he tell me I had my head cut off? Anyway, you're going to see some bloopers in this video. I'm going to leave them in.
It's inspired by Erin from Provincial Farmhouse when she was doing, what was it called? Like a cast iron look for like a French planter. Well, that got me thinking, and I did some research looking at all different kinds of French inspired cast iron planters, saved a ton of pictures, and then I was ready to pick one to get started on. You're going to learn some new techniques, perhaps new ones to you. I'm going back in my old faux biz days, reserves of kinds of finishes and things I did. For example, do you know how to create something that looks like peeled paint? And I mean really peeled. Going to show you that. Also, I've done a lot of videos on creating faux rust with a variety of projects over the years. I've used Faux Effects Rust Kit, certainly used Dixie Belle's Rust Patina, and then the standard cinnamon mix, which I also usually add some alcohol inks and things to that. But this one that I will be showing you is a new product to me, and from what I've seen, it's going to make life really easy for creating realistic rust. So I'm excited to show you that. But I had to start with a planter base. I could have gone to Goodwill or even like a Habitat for Humanity type place where they resell things that people throw there that they consider junk and they resell it. Here it's called Restore. Get a lot of things there. Or I could have just gone to one of the big box stores to find an actual planter. But my husband likes projects, so I gave him one. He is starting to build me a box. Now this is not going to be for exterior. Even if you were to buy a plastic planter or something that is for outside, with the finishes that you're going to put on it, I would never recommend it being used for outdoor. It's strictly an indoor thing. So, starting with 1/4 inch Birch Plywood. Is that right, Andy? Yes, okay. He always has me draw a sketch, which I did a little rough one here for him, measurement-wise. The interesting thing about this is it's not totally a square box. The ends are angled. Is that a 45 or 22 and a half?
22 and a half.
22 and a half angle. All made out of the 1/2 inch birch. Just for your information, this front piece is just shy of 14. Probably because he cut it 14 and then having to cut the 22 and a half edge for the miter, it shortened the length. So this is 14. This was 2 inches. This was 7 inches. And the height is pretty tall, 9 inches. And the reason is because I'm going to be adding a lot of molding to this, but to give it some dimension, I needed some wood pieces at the bottom, and there will be one at the top too. Excuse the bees. I'm out here in Randy's shed, and the carpenter bees are everywhere. But Randy is in the construction business, and I don't know if my head's cut off. Can you see?
Yep, it is. Back up. Back up more.
Well, I'm at the table.
We'll get behind it where you were at.
The sheetrock broke.
Yeah, it's not made to lay on.
I was just leaning.
Just lean on it.
My husband is in the construction business in sheetrock drywall. And he was on some job where he was having to remove some chair rail. They were going to trash it. He knows better than to do that. He always brings things home that potentially we could use. So this is chair rail, but it's pretty big, pretty tall. But I needed this curve because I'm going to be putting some molds on it. Well, if you just put it there like that, you can see it's still pretty tall. But that is why I went from about 7 inches tall to 9. He is ripping down, he's already done one piece somewhere, but he's ripping this down in the groove right here so that we can use this top portion up here and the bottom portion at the bottom. It has a bottom, obviously, and that's the shape. So, we will continue. Oh yeah, I was going to look and see. I need to look at that picture again, babe, to decide which way I want the curve. I'm pretty sure I want the fat part at the top. I know I do. It'll look weird the other way. So the fat part at the top.
That's what we ought to
Flush at the bottom. Okay. But I have to go get some trim pieces and some molding, because this is going to have to come down a little bit, because I'm going to be adding a piece of molding that comes from the top and ties into this and butt it. So I need to go see which piece I want to use, and I'll bring some clay and stuff up here so we can take a measurement on where we want to put this, the top of this, where it will go. Let's get started. Looking at trim pieces, trim molds that I have. I think all these are too thin, and no, it needs bigger. On the bottom, I'm thinking this one, because see the shape?
Okay, I wasn't studying the bottom.
But on the top, I want something similar to that. It's not a rope. I see, you can see here from the top. This is a rope. I am filming. I guess I'll have to cut that part out. Yeah. I started thinking I needed bloopers on this video. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Who's to know?
What?
Who was to know?
On the top here, stop doing that. See, it's not slanted. I mean, I've got this rope trim, but it's slanted, and I really don't want the slant. So, maybe this one for the top.
I said this one for the top, and then you'll have the trim below it.
And this one for the bottom. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of pieces of those two, and let's just put it on the trim, and see if that's going to work.
Okay, well, while you're doing that,
Yeah.
I'm going to go find a sack.
Okay. Left of the sink, bottom drawer, there are lunch sacks. Oh, you know what? There's brown sacks under the sink to the left.
Okay.
Like, you know, grocery bag. This piece looks very weird by itself. What if I put that under it and it fills up the whole thing?
That looks good.
Okay. And then on the top, we actually got to use the box and the trim piece to see about this. Yeah. Okay. Oops. Stuck. So, I guess you want to measure that to see where you know, or just put a pencil mark or something. Yeah. And I'd rather have it
tight than too far down.
Yeah, because you can always smoosh it.
No, I can't smoosh it.
You can smoosh that.
Yeah, so I don't want a gap
Right.
between
That's
the
what I said.
trim. Okay.
You can smoosh it.
Is that your technical term?
That's my scientific term. I've been doing the word game, and smoosh is a word.
Spell it.
Smoosh?
Uh-huh.
S-M-oosh?
Wasp nest.
Hornet's nest.
Oh, a faux hornet's nest.
Wait a minute.
What is that wire?
Hanger wire for ceilings.
Oh, for drywall. Drop in acoustical. Is that gonna get these bees to go away? They are everywhere. And they drill holes, burrow holes in the wood. A true rusted metal bucket. What have you done? Did you screw a paint lid to the bottom of that?
Yep. Totally rotted out.
Well, there's nothing planted in it.
No, I was waiting till that thing in there to even make me put one of them in there.
Okay. This stuff will grow anywhere. Alright, well, it's been a day or so, and I'm still out at Randy's workshop / shed. And by the way, Randy, I only see one carpenter bee that's flying around. I don't know if that's because it's cloudy or if your faux hornet's nest is working.
Who knows?
I don't know. Anyway, it's a little cloudy out here. Hopefully I can adjust the video, but I want to show you where we're at and what I've got to do next in terms of wood trim before I can then take it to the basement to my craft room. So he has put on this trim here, mitered the corners. Remember I said he cut the top part of this chair rail off and has put it up here. Now for feet, I am going to be using molds, and I am going to be using a very, very tough product. I've used it before. It's hard to work with, but man, that stuff is rock solid, and it is called Epoxy Sculpt, I think. I'll double check when I get to that point. But still, I wanted a support for the feet, and I wanted them to slant. Originally, we had these. We had 3 of them. And Randy was able to take a couple of pliers and bend that in a curve because I wanted it to curve. But they're old. I went to Lowe's. They did not have the exact same thing. What are you doing in there? Oh, he was looking for the one. See, he bent one, which would have worked great in the corner, although it's still a little big. And these being more narrow will give me more flexibility on what molds I want to use. But they're basically just some metal corner pieces. Right now, he's glued them down. They seem pretty solid, but I never want them to break. So I may end up going to get some bolts, nuts and bolts, and screw them in from the bottom side. I don't care if the bolt is showing from the top. I mean, this is supposed to replicate something iron. Normally legs would probably be welded, but still, somebody's probably going to fill this. They're not getting this to look at the inside necessarily. So there's that. Now, I want to get my picture. This is one of the pictures of what I'm kind of going by for shape. Can you see this trim piece here? See, there's a trim piece there, which this is what we're using for that, even though it angles out. Mine doesn't. That's okay.
But you see, the inside flat piece is boxed. I really want that look. So what I have to do now, I'll show you the products I have and what I'm going to have to do to make these corners. And I'll have some seams, but I'm sure my Randy can put some filler in them to help cover that up. Plus there will be texture later. But at Hobby Lobby, I have these pieces, a 1/2 inch wide, 1/4 inch deep, and they are basswood, B-A-S-S. Then I have these pieces, which are balsa wood. So if I turn this, well, is that gonna work? Oh, there. If I turn it like that, that gives me a finished look instead of a flat surface like the picture, although theirs is concave. Mine's not concave, but it does give a finished piece. Now, what about this part? Well, I've got some more balsa wood, basswood. Wait, this is balsa wood. This is basswood. They're different thicknesses. That's the only issue I have here. Looks like it would require both of these. I'm going to use my Cricut, and I'll show you how in a minute. Another thing about this, it does have some flex to it. So I think I'll be able to turn it, I don't know, in these curved corners. Randy, you think if we wet this and hung it up in a curve?
It would break.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to go for it right now, and then we'll punt.
If it was green, maybe, yeah, but dried out, it would break.
Well, this one that I had checked is a lot lighter. Look how much it flexes.
Yeah, but if you'd done a 45, it would still break.
But it's a circle. This one I might be able to use. Anyway, okay. So, what I want to do now is I want to line this up here. Like this piece is coming across. And line this one here. And I'm trying to, do you have a pencil? I'll do like this first. I think I want my circle to come out about that far. My curve from here to here. Ask you a question, Randy. See what you think. My thought process in this was to measure my radius from here to here. Got a measuring tape? So my thought process was to use this wood and my Cricut and create a circle, okay? The radius needs to be 1 1/4. Okay, so my outer circle needs to be 2 1/2.
Can't see it.
Oh, he's being picky. Okay, there's my circle. Here's my radius, 1 1/4. So my diameter is going to be 2 1/2. So here's my question. I don't want to have to go buy more pieces either. But I'm thinking if I cut circles out of these two pieces, I would need a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'd need a total of 8 2 1/2 inch circles. And I'm not sure this piece of wood, there's enough for that. I don't know. So this is where the question's going to come in. If I were to cut the circle, then by hand, I can cut in half and half and have a 1/4 piece to put up here on the box. But if I do that, I'd have a splice Put this back. If I do it that way, I'd have like a splice right there and a splice right there, which might be more obvious. I'm wondering if I shouldn't just butt these and then put a tiny piece, which would guarantee I have enough of this other wood, make it a much smaller circle. You think so? Yes, okay. Because I am going to have a mold over this, which will help disguise the seams, even though they will need to be, whatever you call it, filled. Okay, so I got to measure again.
I'm going to stop here and just let you visually see what I'm doing, but the reason I'm stopping the audio is because I ended up changing my mind about this with the corners. It just wasn't practical. It was going to take entirely too long, and I decided, why am I not just using clay? I can do this easily. It is going to have some texture over it, so the whole thing in the end will come together and look like one piece. Additionally, that little corner piece that I thought I could use to edge it, Randy was right. It would not flex correctly. So I'm either going to have to leave that off altogether, or I have a thought of using caulking. My husband's really good with a caulking gun, and running your finger along it for a concave surface. I haven't asked him yet, so I don't know if that part's going to work or if I'm just going to leave that off altogether. At this point, I wanted to figure out what I was going to use, if anything, butted up next to that basswood trim piece that made the box, and my little curved quarter circles out of the clay. I tried several things. I used my clay extruder and said, no, this is not working. So then I went to some molds. Finally did this one, and I do believe if I'm going to use one at all, this will be the mold that I use. I like the look of it. Show you here. And I do adjust my camera here in a little bit. I have to put it up way higher because this box is big and it's just too close to the camera, is too close to the box. But anyway, I decided I wasn't going to do that next, and I'm moving on to my corner pieces that are at that 22.5 degree angle. The first thing I'm doing is drawing out my size of my corner pieces, and then you'll see that I'm going to look at the picture of the cast iron planter that I'm kind of sort of copying, and I need to create that design. I really like it, so I'm going to attempt to make some stamps that will resemble that design. It's fairly simplistic. I mean, it's kind of a rounded half circle inside a recessed circle, but then the little top and bottom pieces kind of look like, I don't know, shutters, so to speak, in terms of the style of it. So I'm going to make me a stamp using some popsicle sticks and glue them together and create that design so I can press it into my clay. I love parchment paper to draw on, but tape does not stick to it. It's very difficult to get any kind of tape, masking or blue tape. So what I've done here is I've cut it out, my design, and I'm just wrapping it around a piece of wood. And the point of that is because I want to create, I'm not sure what to call it, side rails maybe. I'm using 3 popsicle sticks, taping them together, and the purpose of that is the thickness of the clay that I want. If I have some of those side rails, so to speak, when I go to roll out my clay, I can roll my rolling pin right across those side rails, across those popsicle sticks, and I get the same thickness all up and down, which is important for this. So that's what I'm doing here. I just love that little cherub from the Divine Floral mold, but it looks a little lonely, so I need to have some very French-looking scroll work above and below the cherub. To do that, I'm using redesigned Salon de Glacis mold, bits and pieces here and there. And on the ends, I will also use this Salon de Glacis mold along with another one they have, the center of it, called Remi, which you will see coming up.
My next step is to put trim around the top edge of the box. Now, whenever I have a long piece of trim that I need to do, I'm going to show you how I do that. I've shown it in several videos. I don't know that I've ever narrated it, just thinking that most people are observing what I'm doing and understanding why, but I'm going to explain it this time. On the front of the box, it's around 14 inches. So I want to go about 15 because I am going to need to miter those corners where trim meets trim. If you think about if this were wood, you wouldn't bend wood. So the same way with clay, you don't want to bend the clay around a sharp corner. You want to be able to miter it. So I need about 15 inches. Let's look and see. This is a little over 9. So about 1 2/3 of the way will get me what I need. First thing I'm going to do, of course, is dust it with cornstarch. That's going to help release the clay. Now while I'm working, I want to talk a minute about clays. This is hardy soft clay. I use it pretty much 99% of the time. And I'll tell you why. When I first started, I used basic air dry clay. When I first started doing a lot of molds. There are times where I like to use the air dry clay if I want cracking and my mold is thick. It's definitely going to crack. The cheaper the clay, the more it's going to crack. The other thing about air dry clay is that it shrinks. And after it dries, it's pretty brittle. This is why I like the hardy soft clay. Number one, it does not crack. Number two, it's not brittle. It stays flexible even after a couple of days of drying. Now, does it shrink? Yes, it will shrink some. I don't see that it shrinks as much as other air dry clays, but it will shrink some. So, rolling it up in a long little skinny roll, I just press it in the mold. Now, the downside to the hardy soft clay is that you can't really take a scraper like a Japan scraper and go along and get really crisp edges. It rolls. See how it just rolls up. So you more or less just have to use your fingers to get yourself that crisp, nice edge. With air dry clay, man, I could shove it down in there and use my Japan scraper and get a totally clean, pure edge. But you know, it's kind of give and take on what you want your outcome to be. All right, now as I near the end of the mold here, I'm not going to go all the way. I'm staying about probably 1/2 inch or so away. Now I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to come back probably around in here and fit it back in. Now because I've lost some inches, I'm going to go ahead this time and go all the way to the end. That way I know I have at least 15 inches. Can you do this for long, long stretches? Well, yes and no. So if it's something like 30 inches long, that's probably not going to work as well for you. So what I do then is I try to think about where I might end up with a good splice that would naturally look normal, or if I'm going to be covering up this with additional clay molds on castings on top, I might make my seam at that junction. Okay, while I'm doing this, I want to be able to show the seam. So I'm going to do another piece. My side edges are about 2 inches, but I'm going to just go enough where I can do both sides of the front section at one time. You do need to have enough, like where they meet, you're going to want to match them up. So if I just needed, say, 2.5, 3 inches, I might want to go 4 or 5, just to make sure that I can line up the placement of the casting so that it looks rather seamless. Okay, I'm going to grab the front of the box and we'll apply, and I'll show you the mitering process. All right, here's my nice long beautiful piece. First thing I'm going to do is kind of lay it here, make sure I've got my length, and decide, okay, here's my center. I want that center oval to be right there. In terms of placement. Okay, I'm going to move it down here because I've got a little dent in this oval, and I know that's going to eventually be covered up, and I still got enough room here on this edge. It's a tiny bit, but I've got enough. So I'm going to get my TITEBOND Quick and Thick. You can do two things here. You can apply the glue to the back of your casting, but in this case I'm just going to put it right on the wood, but I'm not going to go all the way to the edge here. I want to have that loose and not glued for when I do the miter. Same thing on this other end, so I'm going to stay about 1 inch away. Again, I'm staying away from the edges for right now. Now I can see here's my half. I'm going to lay that like that half matches up and come in here and put that part of it down. All right, now taking something sharp, I like to use my Japan scraper. You could also just use something smaller like this. I'm going to tilt it a little bit so I can see right where my edge is, right there. That's where I want my miter to be. So I'm going to come in and press through both pieces of clay at the same time. I can remove this top piece, lift this up, remove the bottom piece, and we have our seam. Now if I did not want this line necessarily to show, I could take a tool, something like this, and kind of cross over and smooth out. I'm not really worried about that though, because I do want it to look like it is wood trim or iron trim in this case. So that's how you do it. To the other end, and I will continue on till I get the entire box done. Forgot an important step here. There's no glue behind that. If you glue all the way to the edge, it's very hard and goopy to get the casting off. That's why I glue the corners last.
Thankfully, there's not a whole lot left to do in terms of molds before I can begin the finish process, which, by the way, the finishing process is going to be a separate video. As you can already tell, this is already a long video. So what I'm doing here is sketching again a little piece that appears to be on the top of my picture there on the side. Of course, all of this is metal, so in the picture. So what I'm trying to do is replicate that, and I need another piece of clay at the top resembling what is in the picture. So I'm sketching it out. I'm going to size it, and again I will use the Hardy soft clay for this piece. When we get to the topper and when we get to the feet, which the feet are going to be next, I will be using the epoxy sculpt and talking about that. So here I am checking my drawing, seeing where I need to kind of curve it out like in the picture. It's time now for me to address the feet and also some of the pieces of castings that are going to stick up above on the top of the planter. And I need something that's going to be very durable, very hard, and I'm choosing to use Epoxy Sculpt for that. I have used it before, I've talked about it before. If this weren't old, I think that's my biggest problem, is that this is old. It's gotten really dried out and hard. If it were brand new, it would probably be a lot easier to work with. But what you are supposed to do is mix equal parts of A and part B. Okay, so once I have blobs of it out, I roll them in balls. I'm doing 4 balls because of the 4 legs. This is about the only way I can tell if I've got equal parts, is to take them out and just roll them in balls.
then you're supposed to mix them, and you're supposed to knead it for about 2 minutes. I can't tell you that 2 minutes is enough time. You just have to keep kneading them until you don't see but one color. You can use water. It is going to be your friend in using this product. Once you get it mixed, you're going to let it sit for 5 minutes. All right, what I want to do is just basically cover this, build it out to this end a little bit, not quite all the way because I'm going to be putting a mold on the top, and just connect it down here. The wonderful thing about this stuff is it bonds to just about anything, and you don't have to use glue to get it to bond. So I'm just going to tear a little piece of this off. As I've said, water is your friend here for smoothing.
Well, believe it or not, we are almost to the last step, but I am using the epoxy sculpt material for this part. You can put it in molds, but you need to spray your mold with water first. Now I'm going to be combining several molds here to make the little topper pieces. I'll show you a picture real quickly of kind of where I'm going. But also I need to make pieces to cover the feet. I'm letting the feet kind of dry a little bit right now while I'm testing some of these molds, but I'll get right back to it here shortly. You will see me use some glue when I get to the top pieces, just to help them bond a little better. The wood is thin there, and then putting this clay on top of Hardy soft clay. Hardy soft clay kind of ends up kind of a little bit powdery feeling to the touch, and I didn't want to have to smush my clay, epoxy clay molds, so I did use some glue. After that, we're nearing the end. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. The next video is going to show the finishes that I do on this faux cast iron planter, to include peeled paint and a brand new rust technique. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, keep looking up, and have a good one.